Ayo, back at it again with another video. Thank you all for watching. I greatly appreciate it. So this video is the next 6 expansion candidates for each of the G6 conferences. So there's the Pac-12, the American, the Sun Belt, the Mountain West, the MAC, and Conference USA. So these are my 6 choices for each of these conferences. I did do a video, if I move over to the next tab, I did the next 4 for each of the Power 4 conferences. So I made a challenge for myself. Instead of doing the next 4 for the G6, I did the next 6 candidates. I think that would make a lot of sense for each of the 6 conferences. So as we go through it, so the Pac-12, I think would make a lot of sense to get the 2 Nevada schools, so UNLV and Nevada. Makes a lot of sense. I think we got San Jose State, and then New Mexico, Wyoming, and St. Mary's. So if you're the Pac-12, there are a lot of good, solid brands, football brands that you can expand to. If you're the Pac-12, you're probably pulling from the Mountain West. So we have 5 Mountain West members, and then St. Mary's. The reason why I added St. Mary's is because you already have Gonzaga in conference. They're a non-football member. So I think St. Mary's makes a lot of sense. Pair them with Gonzaga for all sports minus football. The reason why I chose Wyoming and New Mexico, I chose Wyoming because you already have Colorado State in conference for the Pac-12. It makes a lot of sense. Wyoming-Colorado State rivalry. It makes a lot of sense for travel as well. New Mexico gets you into a new state. Wyoming gets you into a new state. Not really big in terms of media markets, but it really gets you more quality brands and expand into more states, which I think that's a really solid pickup, especially if you are able to add one or both of the Nevada schools. So that pretty much solidifies most of the West Coast states. You already have Washington, Oregon, and California covered. You add Nevada, you add New Mexico, you add Wyoming. The only state that you wouldn't have covered on the West Coast is Arizona. So those are my 6 choices for the Pac-12. My 6 choices for the American, I actually had James Madison going to the Big 12 in my last video. I do think James Madison would make a very solid expansion candidate for either the Big 12 or the ACC. But in this scenario, I have them going to the American. I took 4 schools from the Sun Belt and 2 from the Mountain West. James Madison, Coastal Carolina, Old Dominion, App State. Really solid brands. I think they're all really good choices for the American, because the American's probably going to get rated. You're probably, if you're the American, you're probably losing Memphis. You're probably losing Tulane, South Florida, Rice maybe. You're probably losing a handful of schools. And then I added Air Force and Northern Illinois from the Mountain West. Air Force makes a lot of sense because you already have Army and Navy as members. And then Northern Illinois gets you that Chicago media market. I know DeKalb is, I think, like 50 to 60 miles outside of Chicago. But if you're the American, I think getting into Chicago media market with Northern Illinois is a smart decision. So for the Sun Belt, so I have Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee either going to the Sun Belt or to the MAC. I think they make more geographic sense in the Sun Belt, but I also think the MAC should think about them as well. For the Sun Belt, I think the 6 teams you choose are Western Kentucky, Middle Tennessee. That kind of gets you into Kentucky and Tennessee. Sam Houston gets you back into the state of Texas. Missouri State gets you into Missouri. And then Miami and Ohio gets you into the state of Ohio. So the Sun Belt, I have 4 schools from Conference USA and 2 schools from the MAC. The Mountain West, I think you have 1 from Conference USA and 5 FCS programs. Montana State, Montana from Big Sky, and then South Dakota State, and North Dakota from the Missouri Valley. So I think New Mexico State makes a lot of sense. They're currently in Conference USA. New Mexico is currently in the Mountain West, so if New Mexico moves up to the Pac, then Mountain West would pick up New Mexico State. So I think the rest of the Montana and Dakota schools make a lot of sense, considering you already have North Dakota State in conference as a football member, I think it makes a lot of sense to bring in South Dakota State to pair with North Dakota State, the two Montana schools, and your South Dakota and North Dakota. For the MAC, I also have Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee. I already kind of touched on that, why I think they're probably a more geographic fit for the Sun Belt. But if you're the MAC, I think it makes perfect sense to go after both of those. I think Delaware makes a lot of sense in the MAC. They're currently in Conference USA. And then I have 3 from the Missouri Valley. I have Illinois State, which they were in the FCS Championship this year. Makes a lot of sense to get you back into Illinois after Northern Illinois moves from the MAC to the Mountain West. But in this scenario, I have Northern Illinois going to the American. And then Youngstown State makes a lot of sense geographically. And then if you're expanding into Illinois, I think Northern Iowa makes a lot of sense by expanding into Iowa. Really solid FCS football programs, 3 from Conference USA and 3 from Missouri Valley FCS football conference. And lastly, the 6 for Conference USA, I have 4 from the state of Texas, Austin Peay, and Eastern Kentucky. So I think Tarleton State, Stephen F. Austin, Abilene Christian, and our Incarnate Word from all 4 from the state of Texas, I think makes a lot of sense for Conference USA. And then lastly, I think Austin Peay and Eastern Kentucky also make a lot of sense. But I chose 4 from the state of Texas because Texas is a state that has a lot of great football programs, both at the FBS level and at the FCS level. And if Conference USA gets rated, I think you have to kind of go into the state of Texas and look for really quality, really solid FCS programs that can definitely make the jump. And I think Tarleton can, Stephen F. Austin can, Abilene Christian, and Incarnate Word can. And then Austin Peay and Eastern Kentucky, both in Kentucky and Tennessee. So that is my next 6 candidates for each of the G6 conferences. I do have Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee State being on the radar for the Sun Belt and for the MAC. And also I have James Madison in the American in this scenario, but I do see them as a candidate for Big 12 or ACC expansion, especially considering how good James Madison football has been over the past couple of years and even couple of decades. So that is my next 6 expansion programs for each of the G6 conferences: the Pac-12, the American, the Sun Belt, the Mountain West, the MAC, and Conference USA. With that, that's the end of the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Deuces.